Phase 5 is now officially underway, and our new lineup of Avengers are going to have to figure out how to stop Kang the Conqueror. So, how are they going to do it? We're about to find out together by looking over the many ways in which Kang has been defeated in the comics, and seeing how that could be applied to the MCU. One of the earlier encounters any Marvel heroes had with Kang was during Strange Tales number 134. If you haven't read it or need a refresher, the Human Torch and the Thing go back in time to Camelot and rescue Merlin. Yes, Merlin the Wizard, who ends up disrupting Kang's power source, allowing the Knights of the Round Table to conquer the Conqueror. Superheroes chasing Kang across time and space is a recurring theme you'll notice throughout this video, and we'll dive deeper into that later. Whether it be Kang's armor, his time ship or time chair, his many weapons and inventions, or something obscure like his Light of the Centuries sphere, wherever Kang is drawing his power from, it would serve well to attack or destroy that. I know that's like the obvious answer when it comes to thwarting any supervillain, but hear me out here. As I said just a moment ago, ultimately Kang is a man called Nathaniel Richards, and other than his supreme intellect and ingenuity, Nathaniel Richards by himself does not possess any powers, at least not in the comics. But Marvel Studios and the MCU could totally change that, which we'll cover a little more later, but for now, let's move along. Alternatively, or on top of attacking Kang's hypothetical power source, maybe the Avengers could give Kang a taste of his own medicine. Maybe they could use Kang's own technology, inventions, and weapons against him in order to defeat him. I'm sure you'd agree that this approach would be a great way to catch Kang off guard and by surprise. Fight fire with fire. During Fantastic Four number 19, in one of the quartet's earliest and most famous encounters with the Conqueror, they would confront Pharaoh Rama-Tut, who turned out to be one of Kang's many variants. Of course, to sum it up quickly, Rama-Tut possessed and used an ultra-diode ray gun against the Fantastic Four, stripping Marvel's first family of their powers. But eventually, the tides would turn and the diode ray would be used against Rama-Tut, sending the Pharaoh running through time, and returning our heroes' powers, all the classic superhero storytelling we love. During the Avengers number 11, Kang constructed an android version of Spider-Man called the Time Spinner, epic name by the way, who infiltrated and compromised Earth's mightiest heroes. After taking out each Avenger one by one, Time Spinner would come face to face with the real Spider-Man, and Kang's plan would backfire because Spidey kicked him to the curb. I'll go out on a limb and say that it's totally possible that sometime during Phase 5 there is or will be a robotic imposter among the Avengers, probably planted there by Kang. If there were an artificial fraud, I'm sure the Avengers could sniff it out and tamper with its hardwiring. Maybe use it against Kang somehow. I don't know, I'm not a superhero. I do know that trying to master the Time Tyrant's tech could be risky business. So maybe that means that the key to defeating Kang lies within tools we and our heroes are already familiar with, or tools that we are all about to be introduced to. Eternals was 2022's most streamed MCU project on Disney+, so I'm sure you've all watched it, and I'm sure you all saw the post-credit scene. Dane Whitman gets a glimpse of the corruptive Ebony Blade, but before Dane can reach out and touch it, we hear the vampire hunter Blade's voice calling him away. And honestly, it was kinda confusing on the surface. In the comics, Dane Whitman becomes the first heroic Black Knight, as Black Knights were primarily villains before him. The Black Knight wields the Ebony Blade, and the Ebony Blade corrupts its wielder more and more with every drop of blood it spills. Dane was able to overcome this curse and actually earned a spot as a member of the Avengers by defeating, drumroll please, Kang the Conqueror. And this is why they have seemingly paired Whitman up with Blade in the MCU, who has a movie of his own in Phase 5. Dane will probably master the Ebony Blade by slaying a bunch of vampires and other underworldly creatures, because it'd be hard for Dane Whitman to redeem himself if he slaughtered a bunch of humans and tried to join the Avengers. I guess Wanda sort of got a pass. Bucky did that whole thing. I digress. This all comes back to Kang because maybe the Ebony Blade will be a much bigger key in defeating the Conqueror than we initially thought. Maybe Dane will earn his spot in the Avengers team by terminating a Kang variant, just like he did in the comics. The Avengers could use a particular weapon to their advantage, or they could call a friend. Earlier, I mentioned the android Time Spinner that Kang unsuccessfully used to try and destroy the Avengers. That story ended with the Conqueror getting his tail kicked by your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, which also seems to be the case virtually every time these two characters have crossed in the comics. Spider-Man has fought Kang a good few times, and the Webhead always seems to be able to find a way to defeat him, even though Spidey doesn't take to time travel too well, though we'll get to more on time travel in a little bit. Even though Peter Parker has beaten Kang in fisticuffs, mano a mano, usually the wall crawler does need help from some of his amazing friends. If we look at comic books, Marvel Team Up number 9, 10, and 11, Spider-Man needed help from his fellow heroes Iron Man and the original Human Torch. The Inhumans even got tossed in the mix, and all hands were on deck in the effort to defeat Kang. In the 2020 series Symbiote Spider-Man Kang in Black number 3, Spider-Man gets brought aboard Kang's time ship, and the two get into a good fight. The scrap goes entirely Spider-Man's way, until Kang Kang got really mad and Rocket Raccoon had to step in, and that was pretty much that. I don't think simply sicking Peter Parker on Kang is the answer in finishing him for good. I mean, nobody knows or even remembers Peter, except for the other Spider-Men from No Way Home, who will hopefully return to help fight Kang come Secret Wars. One theory I'll throw out there is that some superheroes might even beat some Kangs before realizing there's like an infinite number of them. So instead of looking in-universe for a friend, maybe the Avengers should look for help from friends from another universe. Enter Deadpool. Finally, Deadpool and Wolverine are officially joining the MCU, and I'm sure we can all expect a slew of other X-Men and X-Universe characters like Cable and Colossus to tag along as well. And even though the Merc with the mouth is often the butt of the joke, Deadpool could actually end up being one of the biggest keys in defeating Kang the Conqueror. How, you ask? In the original Secret Wars event that happened in the 80s, Deadpool was nowhere to be found. Decades later, in the comic book run called Deadpool's Secret Wars, it was revealed that Wade Wilson was actually involved behind the scenes the whole time. In fact, the mutant had a hand in like a bunch of key plot points, sort of retconning a lot of things in a tongue-in-cheek way. I highly recommend you check it out. During this storyline, Deadpool and Kang went toe-to-toe. Well, sort of. In an absolutely hilarious encounter, Deadpool one-shot Kang in the old Infinity Stones, if you know what I mean. The Merc would finish Kang off, taking him out for good. Could this happen in the MCU? Did this even really happen in the comics, or did the fourth wall breaking mutant make it all up? Let me know what you think in the comments section below. And while you're down there, let me break the fourth wall for a moment and ask you to hit those like and subscribe buttons, so we can keep bringing you content like this. Are you done yet? Good. We know that Deadpool 3 will see the X-universes merge with the main MCU timeline via time travel. This makes total sense because the X-Men movies have been dealing with alternate timelines and the destruction of universes since way before Marvel Studios ever did it, or the Multiverse saga even began. In X-Men Days of Future Past, we saw mutant powers sending characters back and forth in history, changing timelines in the process. During Deadpool 2, we saw Cable do the same thing using technology. So, what if in order for the Avengers to defeat Kang, they try using his best weapon against him? We talked earlier about giving Kang a taste of his own medicine, and what better way is there to do that than by playing 3D chess and attacking his strength? In the comics, 99% of every time Kang or one of his variants has been defeated, such as Immortus or the aforementioned Rama-Tut, it happens when one or a group of our heroes track him down, or run into him traveling throughout time and space. For instance, in Moon Knight Annual number 1, Moon Knight travels through time and teams up with a bunch of variant versions of himself, and they end up killing Kang. In the Incredible Hulk number 135, Hulk followed Kang to the past, and prevented the Time Tyrant from terminating his grandfather. Bringing it back to Cable and Deadpool 2, in the comic Cable number 57, the mutant fought Rama-Tut in the future, and in Avengers West Coast number 60 through 62, Agatha Harkness and the Scarlet Witch traveled back in time to thwart Immortus' menacing plans, which could also potentially be a plot point in the MCU to some extent. Maybe Agatha and Wanda will team up and redeem themselves by stepping up to Kang or one of his variants. We could go on for days, listing off all of the dates and places that Marvel superheroes had followed Kang to. And obviously, using time travel to their benefit might be difficult, but the Avengers did pull it off against Thanos, am I right? Or rather, wasn't it an alternate timeline variant of Thanos? It was, which coincidentally enough brings me to my next point. Instead of attacking Kang the Conqueror himself, maybe the Avengers' approach should be focused on his variants. It's unclear at this point in the MCU where Kang's variants will pop up as individual villains in movies and shows, and your guess is as good as mine, but rest assured most of them will more than likely be evil. That being said, let us not forget He Who Remains, who was introduced in Loki, as he is somewhat of a good guy, but still kind of maniacal. At least I thought so. That dude kinda creeped me out explaining the whole multiversal war. Anywho, earlier in our video we went through how in the comics the Fantastic Four threw down with Rama-Tut, and that could totally be a plot point in the Fantastic Four movie, which is slated to kick off Phase 6. In Phase 5, the series Agatha Coven of Chaos could possibly introduce Immortus, and it would probably be beneficial in the long run to take these evil Kang variants out ASAP. Some of Kang's lesser-known variants and incarnations are characters like Scarlet Centurion, Mr. Gryphon, and Kid Immortus. Now, we haven't seen any of these characters in the MCU yet, but as I said earlier, Phase 5 just started, and I'm sure a few of them will pop up along the way. We know that eventually we'll probably come across a Council of Cross-Time Kangs, which is like an entire planet filled with endless Kangs. Kang's Dynasty, if you will. We can assume this based on what He Who Remains described and visualized to us as the Multiversal War. Like I said before, the majority of Kangs and his variants are villainous, and sometimes they can even be at each other's throats. So maybe instead of singling all the evil Kangs out one at a time, a more tactical and better approach would be to befriend his good variants, even though they may be few and far between. Now, if you've been paying attention to the Marvel Cinematic Universe throughout Phase 4, as I'm sure you all have, you'll have noticed that Marvel Studios is slowly but surely assembling their version of the Young Avengers. Stinger, Kate Bishop, Scar, Miss Marvel, Speed, Wiccan, America Chavez, Eli Bradley, Kid Loki. These characters have all been introduced in the MCU already. And who is the leader of the Young Avengers in the comics but Iron Lad? Iron Lad is a teenage variant of Kang, or Nathaniel Richards, who ultimately broke for good. In the comics, Kang reached out to a young Iron Lad to try and tell him about his sinister future, but it backfired. Typical villain screw-up. Iron Lad would go on to form the Young Avengers and steal Kang's tech in order to go back in time and kill him. This would unfortunately cause a time paradox, and thus Iron Lad went back to the future and allowed himself to inevitably become Kang. For my money, this is the direction the MCU will probably go in Phase 5. We've got series like Ironheart and movies like Armor Wars on the horizon. We will probably meet other good Kang variants leading up to the Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars, besides Iron Lad. But like I said, there probably won't be many. I guess you could consider He Who Remains a good guy. I mean, he did end the war between the Kangs, right? Right? I keep bringing it up, don't I? Well, that's because Kang can conquer himself. More than just using his own tech or weapons or methods of madness against him, what if Kang was capable of thwarting his very own plans? Kang has a sort of self-resentment and is ultimately at war with himself. Remember in Loki when He Who Remains said, "I am the one who ended the multiversal war," and now he's just chilling at the end of time. Could He Who Remains have been referring to the pending Kang War that is on its way? There are many theories online that imply that Kang feared Tony Stark and actually allowed all of the events of Infinity War and Endgame to take place, knowing that Iron Man will be removed naturally. Perhaps this could be true, and maybe it's all sort of this meta full circle thing, as Kang may be destroyed by his own Iron Man-inspired self, Iron Lad. Other theories suggest that the main Kang we meet in Ant-Man 3, or a slightly different variant of that Kang, will be the one to learn the error of his ways and destroy his future self. If you have any other theories on this, feel free to throw them in the comments section. All in all, Kang has beef with Kang, and it will inevitably come to a head as each Kang discovers their multiversal destiny. And that is why, amidst all of the trippy history and convolution, the true way to defeat Kang is probably easier than you may think. Because really all the Avengers have to do to beat Kang is just fight him. When it boils down to things pound for pound, Kang's win-loss ratio against the Avengers and Fantastic Four is abysmal. And that's not even counting his variants who have taken more L's than I can count. Whether it be in a group setting or one-on-one, Kang has been spanked quite a few times. You have to remember that when you strip Kang or Immortus or Scarlet Centurion down to his core, he's Nathaniel Richards. And besides his supreme intellect and ingenuity, Nathaniel Richards does not possess any base superpowers. Now, of course, the MCU could change this, and there are many rumors online circulating that Kang will be more than just an engineer. Some speculate he could have also mastered magic, or is a mutant or inhuman, or a combination of the three. But from what we can tell at this point, just like in the comics, Kang is ultimately a man who has been beaten up countless times when isolated by the likes of Black Bolt, Black Knight, Spider-Man, Iron Man, Hulk, the Vision, and many others. Heck, even Captain Picard and the USS Enterprise have taken Kang out before. It will probably take an accumulation of everything discussed in this video to make that happen. And that is how to defeat Kang the Conqueror. Maybe. How do you think the Avengers will conquer Kang in the MCU? Comment below, and while you're down there, be sure to enable notifications so you don't miss out on any conquering comic content.